What really started World War II is in color. I guess it includes all the events from 1919 to 1939.
September the 1st, 1930, thrust deep into Poland to win a swift and absolute victory. Their forefathers had also been on the march. 4 years of World War I, Sir Wilhelm II had been forced to abdicate, being ground down by a remorseless offensive by British, French and US faced starvation. Dangerous myth was taking. They hadn't been defeated in battle, but betrayed by their own cowardly politician. In the morning on November the 11th, 1980, 11th hour of the 11th day, World War I came to an end.
On all 11, I didn't know that.
Woodrow Wilson of the promising to create a new world order. World's leaders to sign up to a new League of Nations.
It was a disaster.
They agreed that from now on, resolved not by fighting, but by debate. His ally, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was dismembered. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Germany itself was greatly reduced in size. Everyone celebrated the birth of countries like Czechoslovakia.
Why not?
Unite the German peoples would come to haunt Europe. Forced to pay a massive £6.6 billion in reparations and
6.6 billion.
America, but its militaristic monarchy had gone. It had become a democracy. Weimar Republic was soon struck by a series of hammerburg. Battles erupted between extreme right-wing nationalists and communists, devastated by hyperinflation, which
Oh no.
Ordinary people's savings were wiped out. A new breed of rabble-rousing right-wing politicians. In Austria, he had fought bravely.
So he came to Germany when?
In World War I and Cross. His fiery oratory soon enabled him to seize control of the small nationals, attempted an armed coup against the Weimar government. It fell. In prison, he wrote a book, Mein Kampf, blamed Germany's ills on the Jews and demanded that it rebuild its strength into a proper, disciplined political party. In 1929, the US stock market crashed.
Is it the Great Depression?
Employment in Germany soared to over 6 million. Dirted thugs. The SA became the largest party in Germany's parliament, the Reichstag. Hindenburg made him chancellor in January 1933, head of the government.
Well, that's when things go wrong.
Hitler accused the communists and demanded emergency powers, and Hindenburg died. Hitler declared himself president, the Führer of Germany. Führer concentrated on rebuilding Germany's economy, public works, including the 5,000-mile Autobahn. He was also spending lavishly on a huge rearmament program. The country was forbidden to have an air force or submarines.
But they make it anyway.
Was trebled in size. Unveiled a brand new air force, the Luftwaffe, far more than Britain or France. Employment plunged.
And they were secretly building this, so no one monitored it.
Occupied the Saarland district on the French border. Was only claiming back what was rightfully Germany's. Britain nor France objected. Berlin hosted the 1936 Olympic Games. It was seen by many as firm but fair. 1935 Nuremberg laws forbade Jews to marry true Aryan Germans and deprived them.
Well, that's messed up.
And the first threats came somewhere else entirely.
Japan?
Japan, at the start of the 20th century, was already a military. It signed up to the League of Nations. Politically, it was a mess of contradiction. Most Japanese revered their emperor as a living god.
A god, huh?
And the country faced major economic problems. Leaders needed solutions, and they saw them in Chinese Manchuria. Plenty of coal and minerals. Malaya and Hong Kong, controlled by Britain, and the Dutch East Indies.
Well, the Europeans all in the Philippines,
But at
huh?
this stage, Japan had one to rouse the other great power in the United States. The Philippines, Guam, and several islands were under its direct rule. War I, it had had other distractions.
Yes.
This was America's Jazz Age, concentrated on exploiting its vast resources. Economic boom that seemed without end. Pursuit of pleasure. Agreed a naval reduction treaty with Britain, France, and Japan. Came the Great Depression. A quarter of the population lost their jobs, made homeless, living in shantytowns. Japanese forces in Manchuria seized the capital Mukden. A puppet state, Manchu Kuo, was proclaimed under a puppet rule in 1911, was dragged out of retirement. Japan was universally condemned.
Impossible to accept the report.
Japanese then
Ridiculous.
just walked out, and the League suddenly realized leaders had turned their eyes to further conquests. The government of Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek was locked in conflict with the Chinese Communist Mao Zedong. There was civil war. The aim was to guard against any attack by Soviet Russia. Japanese provoked an incident with Chinese troops and invaded.
So they invaded like most of the China.
Chinese were taken by surprise. The communists, even joining the Kuomintang, had overrun much of northern China. The city was then besieged for 3 months. Forces showing no pity or concern for the native population. The Japanese forces really ran amok. 100,000 civilians are estimated to have been massacred. It even attacked British and US warships. The American gunboat Panay was sunk by Japanese bombers. 50 crewmen died.
Yeah.
The League of Nations could do nothing.
And the attack is slowly
Roosevelt
building.
wanted to impose
Acts and policies have far-reaching effects on us.
$25 million loan to Chiang Kai-shek to buy arms. Only involvement was a series of... But China itself received nothing. It had to fight on alone. Now the Western powers were facing aggression much closer to home.
Deve cristallizzare i principi che declinano, la vittoria è per noi, per I primi.
It's easy to laugh at Benito Mussolini.
It's from the Italy's
That
hand.
posturing, but it didn't seem that way in 1920. The country was riven by strikes and land seizing. Seemed powerless in the face of such unrest. A veteran and a journalist decided to take a stand. Wing Nationalist Party. Mussolini ordered his followers to march on Rome. Mussolini swiftly stamped out any political opposition.
Apposizione di patente ingiustizia.
All power was firmly in the hands of the fascist Grand Council. Mussolini's first acts made him immensely popular. Programs
building-
of public works provided employment and transformed Italy's infrastructure.
Building roads and crops and all.
Corruption was rooted out.
Okay, what kind of breed is that?
Italy's armed forces were built up. Powerful navy, bigger than the combined might of the British and French. Mussolini became a source of worldwide inspiration, in contrast to the weakness of the democracies in Britain and France. He wanted to recreate the Roman Empire. He already had a target in mind for his first was Abyssinia, today's Ethiopia, and Italian Somalia. Italian forces provoked a clash with Abyssinian troops, demanding that Abyssinia pay reparations. Here was a small nation under threat from another member of the League, but the League did nothing. But Mussolini would have none of it. 5. The Italian army invaded from Eritrea and Italian Somalia. Primitive Abyssinian forces stood little chance against a modern army, artillery and tanks.
Yeah, they literally have lots of cannons.
Asians dropping gas bombs. Even though gas had been outlawed at Versailles, crime against humanity. Was
And they still do it anyway, huh?
did impose economic sanctions, but they had little. Both Britain and France had been shattered by World War I. Both had suffered mass unemployment, even before the Great Depression. Also faced the cost of controlling empires, had been traumatized by the horrific casualties, all resolved to keep Britain out of future conflict. Had ended World War I with a large and very effective conscript army, designed to police its sprawling empire. When the Great
Is that
Depression
Indian?
struck, any ideas of modernizing the army became clear that there would be a manpower shortage by the mid to late 1930s. Was to adopt an entirely defensive mentality. A series of fortifications was begun in 1930 along the Italy, linked up with fortifications planned by the Belgians, and that France was only capable of waging a defensive to launch an attack on Italy. Their navies in the Mediterranean were outnumbered by Mussolini's new fleet. When Italy conquered Abyssinia, it made sense for both powers to do nothing. They were now faced with a military threat far closer to home, and rearming Germany, soon about to be demonstrated in supporting the rise of another in Spain.
Wait, who?
Communist against fascist, believers against left-wing government had come to power determined to get rid of the centuries-old Spanish monarchy. Popular Front won narrow. Strikes and land seizures led the right to fear that a communist takeover was inevitable. Catholic thinking, senior officers began to consider the possibility of a coup. It was General Francisco Franco. Fighting guerrillas in Spain's colony in Morocco, a new nationalist movement.
Oh yeah, the Franco was forgot.
Mainland garrison front responded by calling for volunteers to defend. He had to get across the Straits of Gibraltar back to Spain. So he turned to the one person.
Yeah, to cross the ocean.
Within a month, new Luftwaffe had begun an airlift, hardened veterans over to southern Spain.
And back then, the probability of being dead in a plane is like 50-50.
Franco's nationalists were confined largely to the northwest and part of transformed when Hitler and Mussolini started to pour in troops and weapons. He seized the opportunity to test his new equipment, some 12,000 troops, with its ultra-modern new bombers and fighters, 50,000 men and more than 700 aircraft. France and the Soviet Union for help led a policy of non-intervention. Joseph Stalin, the Soviet leader, announced that he would help the Republic. Stalin's worry was the rise of fascism in Germany, that he believed communism to be Nazism's ultimate enemy.
They joined the American
Stalin,
or they fight their own fight, I
as a way of
guess.
keeping Germany and Italy occupied, it was something, but no match for the support Franco had received from volunteers, the international brigades. Advancing towards Barcelona from the north, the other led by Franco, Madrid was enveloped on three sides and virtually under siege, indiscriminately against civilian targets. Madrid was heavily bombed in 1937, when the Basque town of Guernica was virtually obliterated, 6,000 civilian deaths.
Yeah, so not
The
people.
area under-equipped amateurs were no match for the professional soldiers. Fighting around Madrid became a symbol of the left's determination, an opportunity for a mass revolution by the work between the anarchists and communists. And their enemy into a small enclave around Barcelona began to recognize Franco's government as his forces closed in for the final assault. Defenders, exhausted after nearly 3 years of fighting, Franco formally declared hostilities at an end. Franco's victory over the Republic proved a disaster. The democracies of Britain and France were impotent to resist any real. Stalin despaired of their willingness to confront. Saw his way open to begin the aggressive policies outlined in January 30th, 1933, put his long-term ambitions into action. His ultimate aim was to conquer territory in the east. Germans were instructed to prepare for a massive
So Russia,
experimentation with new mobile armored tactics. Like Heinz Guderian read the theories of British thinkers like Basil Liddell Hart, British during the 1920s on Salisbury Plain.
they learn from
It
there.
was fast-moving units combining tanks, artillery, and infantry enemy territory.
To expedition tanks from US.
Adopted their ideas with enthusiasm. Hermann Goering had had a framework to build the existence of the Luftwaffe. In March, the army was to be increased to 300,000 men, and France protested feebly at this flagrant breach of the only taken back what was his, the Rhineland and Saarland.
And he's hungry for more power.
Grander target in March had attempted to seize power and unify the country with Germany. Austrian Chancellor Kurt von Schuschnigg protested to Hitler, and that Austria stop mistreating the Austrian Nazis and unite with Germany. The Austrians could vote on whether to remain independent, fearing that it might produce the wrong result, sent in his troops.
Of course.
Complete surprise made it a bloodless invasion, and subsumed into a greater Germany. Turned on his next prey. Czechoslovakians had been part of the old Austrian Empire, but had been cut off when Czechoslovakia was created, and then threatened the Czech government with force if it refused to agree. Large and well equipped, with formidable fortifications on its frontier, Neville Chamberlain decided to act as a peacemaker. Assured him that if he could have the Sudetenland, he would make no further terror. With Mussolini acting as mediator, France and Britain signed an agreement giving the Sudetenland to Germany. Chamberlain flew back to Britain, waving the piece of paper guarantees peace in our time. When troops occupied the Sudetenland and seized, now began sizing up his next target. In the nominal cause was a German minority marooned turn of the port of Danzig to German control, so that East Prussia could be linked up.
He's just trying to take over all countries.
And he had unfinished business with Czechoslovakia, which was ethnically different to the Czech lands appealed in achieving greater independence. The troops now marched into the rest of Czechoslovakia, had seized non-German-speaking territory, heeded his demand that Poland give up Danzig, and Britain declared unequivocally that they would declare war, cared little whether they did or not.
More
In
confident.
Russia, Stalin had also become concerned by Hitler's aggression. Finally, Stalin despaired, deciding that there was another solution. Poland would be split between the two countries, and Stalin would have a free hand to take over. He ordered his armed forces to prepare for an immediate invasion. Führer had made the decision would plunge the world into war.
And now it became World War II. Actually, good documentary ada.